This hangout on air is live. And this is the Oneness Talking Point with Melanie Brockwell. I just feel so strange saying that. Must record some kind of pre-thing so that I don't have to say it every time. Anyway, this week, the topic is compassion. Lots of people have talked about compassion and their version of compassion, the principle of compassion, the act of compassion. But I think the way it makes sense to me is some kind of automatic truth. Compassion as some universal, fundamental, mysterious force. I don't really have a language for it. And it's inclusive. So rather than being an act that's perpetrated from a point of self onto a situation, or an act perpetrated from a point of self toward an other person, I understand compassion as an informing perspective. So it's either there or it's not. And there's no judgment either way, as far as I'm concerned. So it's not an ideal. I don't see it as a means to an end. Like if you feel compassion, then that makes you a holier person and you will reap the benefits of that. I think for me it's more universal. There's a sense of it's either your job or your purpose to have compassion or it's not. And when I'm talking about compassion, I guess I'm talking about the acceptance, the assumption that what's going on is perfect. That's what going on is what is. And then, that surrender to that truth, regardless of how it feels or how it looks or how it seems. And it's an inclusiveness of what we call our experience, as much as it's an inclusiveness of all the people that we consider exist and all of their behaviors that we would judge wanting. The way that we divide the world into perpetrators and victims. And so it includes a curiosity about perpetrators, those individuals that are considered bad or harmful or unfeeling, criminal, cruel, ignorant, from compassion, from the assumption of compassion, those individuals are accepted as part of the perfection. And it doesn't make it okay, because there's no sense of okay in compassion. Compassion's not about justifying. It's not about righteousness. It's not about right and wrong, acceptable and unacceptable. Compassion is a curiosity about what makes it possible for this to exist. So, what elements make up the reality of a situation where it's possible for child soldiers to exist? What configuration of all that is makes it possible for what we call rape and violence and war and suppression and racism, and all of those things, greed, exploitation, human slavery. What makes it possible for those things to exist? That's what compassion is for me. It's a sense of curiosity. So rather than ending our attention to something with the story that that person was bad or did a bad thing, and what do we do with them now? Or how do we stop other bad people and bad things from happening? Compassionate curiosity, or curious compassion, keeps asking the questions about what makes it possible without ending at a point of judgment, without ending at a point of division and hierarchy and a sense of good and bad. And it's really that simple. And the experience that goes along with that assumption, with that curious compassion, includes a compassion of a response. So you're still upset by, you're still concerned for, you're still confused about, and you still feel pain if someone punches you in the face. It doesn't eliminate any of those things. It doesn't make you equanimous. It doesn't make you immune. It doesn't take away what we have come to call humanity. What it does is it allows you to have compassion for all of your feelings and experiences as included in your curious compassion about what makes it possible. So you have permission. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to, want to work with people or want to change policy or whatever it is that you feel compelled to do in there. It doesn't take you out of the equation. It includes you in the equation as an equal and essential aspect of the equation. It doesn't extricate punishment and judgment. It includes all of those things, and it allows for a curiosity about all of those things at the same time that it allows an experience and expression of all of those things. So it never feels like you hit a wall or make a conclusion. The assumption is that there's always more information available, and that whatever you're feeling, it's necessary in this moment. Whether you can understand the reason or not. I don't think reasons are as important in oneness as they are in other cosmologies. There's so much trust that the unreasonable is allowed to exist without a seeking of answers. Even that sense of curiosity about what makes it possible is not a means to finding an answer to what makes it possible. The curious compassion of investigating what makes it possible, or asking the question what makes it possible, or being open to the experience of what makes it possible, or making your self focus on, is about being in the mystery. It's more than a sense of solving a puzzle. There's a sacred, divine wholeness, trust of not knowing that goes along with all of that. And you still intervene in normal, everyday ways. It's not that you don't have what we would call a human experience. It's that you understand it as more than that. You understand it inclusively. The label human experience becomes curiosity in and of itself. The interventions, immediate and long-term, become a curiosity in and of themselves. And so in every moment you come back to the mystery of now, the presence to now, the wisdom of not knowing. And even if you find yourself in the now without compassion, and recognize that it's not something you're capable of, then whatever you are doing, whatever you are capable of, is your purpose, is your wholeness, is the divine oneness and wholeness of all that is, as the whirlpool of the experience called you, rather than some sense of deficiency. Unless, of course, you feel called to have an experience of deficiency, and then you will have that experience. You will question the truth of. You will know what is true for you, because even as I say, you will accept that true compassion is not something available to you. There will be some reaction inside of you that argues with me or gets upset about it. And that's your truth making itself visible. Your truth is the one that argues and gets upset. It's communicating with you. It's living you. In an inclusive understanding, those arguments and doubts and tears and wanting are part of your sacredness, are part of your perfection, are part of a cosmic conversation. It's only in a cosmology of separation that requires labels to differentiate that you come to know those things as doubt and opposition and competition. And if that's the cosmology that you're here to have, then have that. There's something powerful in being able to see, acknowledge, allow, accept whatever cosmology you're here to have. And I think that's part of universal compassion. That's an extension of oneness and surrender, which allows you to have the version of compassion and the cosmology that is true for you. without trying to fix, change, or heal, or teach, or move you towards, or supplicate or re-educate. You know, if you have decided that there's something about your experience that you can call suffering, then what would you like to do with that? Would you like to consider it sacred and perfect for your purpose? Or would you like to find a means to an end to get rid of it? Or would you like to understand it as a punishment for past actions or inactions? What truth makes sense for you is more important to me in oneness than any other imposed perspective that someone might have. I guess one of the exercises that I do with people who want to understand where compassion sits in their cosmology is, if there is a murder, you know, the thing we call murder, which is the name of a crime, which is not the name of a thing, which must, you know, which is constituted by a select criteria of actions. If there is a murder, who do you feel compassion for? Who are you curious about what makes this possible? Is it the murder victim? Is it the murderer? Do you have equal compassion for everyone and everything, or do you only have compassion for those people that you consider victims and deserving? What makes someone deserving of compassion? If it's not everyone, if you don't have curious compassion for everyone and everything that has ever lived, then who do you and what do you have compassion for? And I guess in this instance, the compassion that we're talking about is a perfection assumption and curiosity about what makes it possible for this to exist. So rather than trying to justify the victimhood of a perpetrator, so there is often a discussion about, say, child abusers are victims of child abuse. That's a justification. We're not talking about justification. It's perhaps part of your investigation in the curiosity of what makes this possible. But a victim story about a perpetrator is a very culturally heavy kind of investigation. You know, and I guess that comes back more to the logic and reasonableness. I can understand where someone's coming from if they've never been loved, that they weren't capable of loving in a way that makes sense to me. You know, and that's somewhere on the way to compassion, definitely. And if that's where you find yourself, then that's where you find yourself. And that's enough in my eyes. Is that enough in yours? I don't know if you can hear that. That's my washing machine. It sings to me when it's ready. And I can feel there's a lot of beauty in this topic, and there's a lot of sadness, and there's a lot of quietude. And it's a vulnerable space to be in, almost like prayer. I think it feels similar to that. But even then, I think there are different forms of prayer, so that's hard to pin down. But you figure out how it makes sense to you and have your conversation with yourself about what is compassion, what kind of compassion are you capable of, and where does that sit in your sense of self? Is it okay? Do you want to do something with it? What do you want to do with it? Maybe think about the things or people that you can't feel compassion for. They simply are bad, or they simply have done bad, or they simply are ignorant, or they simply are harmful. And you can't go any further into that investigation. There's no more curiosity available to you. They're responsible for what they've done, and what they've done makes them perpetrators, or makes them criminal, or makes them on the bad, evil side of judgment. They failed in some way. They had access to choices, and they made choices that mean they don't deserve your compassion. Think about those situations. How does it feel to be aware of that about yourself? And if there was someone sitting next to you who is capable, because it's their purpose to feel compassion for those situations or those individuals, what happens for you? Not because they're judging you, but because compassion is available in other places. Can you accept that it's part of your purpose to not be able to feel compassion for those situations and those people? Like real self-awareness, putting all those cards on the table and not dividing them into different sections, really seeing a true reflection is an interesting proposition. Some people find it difficult, and that's okay. I don't think it's meant to be easy or difficult. I think it's meant to be whatever happens for you. And some people find it liberating to see where their compassion ends. And they're quite happy to take responsibility for that and accept that that's their purpose, that that's part of their cosmology and the wholeness and perfection of who they are. And if they're not feeling compassion in those places, what are they doing? And that's when the real investigation begins. The investigation and curiosity about what we are doing. When we accept that whatever's going on is perfect for our purpose, then what are we doing? See how you go with that today. I'm getting really hot in my dressing gown. I'm going to have to take it off. Okay. Lots and lots and lots of love. I'll talk to you next week. Oh, hang on. What's next week? Oh, I think it's relationships. Relationships.